Welcome to Room 57, the place where we delve into the untold stories of power, secrecy, and intrigue. Today, we are about to uncover a tale of unimaginable influence, dark secrets, and a celebrity whose name is synonymous with success and controversy. Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, a mogul who built an empire spanning music, fashion, and entertainment, has long been celebrated as a visionary. However, his success is not without its shadows. Beneath the surface of luxury, fame, and fortune, there lurks a much darker story, one that involves allegations of abuse, manipulation, and criminal activities that would shake his empire to its core. This is the story of Diddy's downfall. The Diddy case, a legal and public spectacle that raised more questions than answers. What happens when a man at the top of his game is accused of being involved in one of the most disturbing criminal enterprises in the entertainment industry? Join us as we take you through Room 57 and uncover the secrets behind one of the most shocking scandals in Hollywood history. Part 1. The Rise of a Mogul. The birth of P. Diddy's empire. The early life of Sean Combs and John Combs was born on November 4, 1969, in Harlem, New York, in a neighborhood that has long been associated with both struggle and success. Raised in a modest household, Diddy's early life was marked by tragedy. His father, Melvin Combs, was murdered when Diddy was just a toddler, leaving his mother, Janice Combs, to raise him alone despite the hardship. Diddy's mother was determined to provide him with opportunities that could take him beyond the streets of Harlem. Diddy attended Howard University in Washington, D.C., where he began studying business. While his peers were focused on academics, Diddy had a different path in mind. He wanted to be in the heart of the entertainment industry. By his sophomore year, Diddy dropped out of college to pursue his dreams in New York, interning at Uptown Records. His big break came when he became an assistant to Andre Harrell, the head of Uptown. Diddy quickly climbed the ranks using his street smarts, charisma, and ambition to form his own vision of the music industry. The birth of Bad Boy Records. In 1993, Diddy took a leap of faith and founded his own record label, Bad Boy Records. His first major signing was the late Notorious B.I.G., whose rise to fame under Diddy's mentorship is one of the most iconic success stories in hip-hop history. Diddy's genius wasn't just in discovering talent. He had a knack for making people believe in his vision. He was not only a producer, but also a marketing genius, promoting his artists in a way that no one had done before. By the mid-1990s, Bad Boy Records had become one of the most successful and influential labels in the world. Diddy was at the helm of the most successful rap and R&B music revolution of the time. P. Diddy became a household name. His empire expanded beyond music into fashion with his Sean John clothing line, his ventures into vodka with Ciroc, and his eventual media empire. His presence was felt in every facet of pop culture. He was not just a producer, he was an institution. With Diddy's rise to the top, he became one of the wealthiest African-American entrepreneurs in the world. He was living the dream: lavish parties, fast cars, and the best of everything money could buy. But there was more to the story, more lurking beneath the surface. The darker side of Diddy's world. As Diddy's career continued to soar, so did the whispers. People began to talk about the power dynamics within his empire, behind closed doors. The world of Bad Boy Records was much darker than it appeared. Stories of late-night parties, excessive drug use, and manipulation began to emerge. Though the public adored Diddy's image as a charming and successful mogul, rumors swirled about his more sinister dealings. In the late 1990s, Diddy found himself embroiled in a bitter feud with Tupac Shakur, an East Coast versus West Coast rap war. Although Diddy was never directly involved in the violence, the situation painted him as someone who was part of a larger cultural conflict. It wasn't just about music, it was about street politics, egos, and power. Tupac was murdered in 1996, and many conspiracy theories linked Diddy to the murder. Whether or not he was involved, his name was forever linked to the violence, leaving a stain on his otherwise spotless public image. The next scandal that hit Diddy was the club shooting incident in 1999, which involved him, his entourage, and his girlfriend J-Lo. Although no one was seriously injured, the media frenzy painted Diddy as a figure who was involved in a life of danger and excess. Surrounded by violence and conflict, Diddy continued to build his empire, but his personal life was growing increasingly complicated. His private affairs began to take on a life of their own, as his relationships, including with longtime girlfriend Kim Porter, were often plagued by rumors of infidelity and deceit. The first allegations, an alleged dark underbelly. Bit as Diddy's fame and fortune grew, so did the dark rumors. People began to talk about the ways in which Diddy allegedly exerted control over his employees and artists. Former employees came forward with stories about being coerced into signing contracts with unfavorable terms, about being manipulated and exploited. These weren't just stories of bad business practices, they were stories that hinted at something much darker. In 2001, the first legal allegations were made against Diddy. A former employee filed a lawsuit accusing him of financial exploitation and illegal business practices. The case was settled out of court, but the rumors didn't go away. In the following years, several other lawsuits surfaced, with plaintiffs claiming that Diddy used his influence in the industry to pressure people into unethical situations. For the most part, these cases were swept under the rug, and Diddy continued to operate his empire with little interruption, but the undercurrents of corruption, exploitation, and manipulation remained. Many began to suspect that there was more going on behind the scenes than anyone knew. The turning point, a darker revelation. The 2010s, Diddy had solidified his position as one of the most powerful men in entertainment. But as his influence grew, so did the level of scrutiny. A string of anonymous tip-offs to law enforcement agencies, followed by allegations from more individuals who had worked with him, hinted at something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Allegations emerged that Diddy had been running a sex trafficking ring, coercing young women into sexual favors in exchange for career opportunities. These women allegedly came from backgrounds with little to no money, and Diddy, with his position in the industry, was accused of exploiting their desperation for fame. These claims were soon followed by accusations from other women who said they had been manipulated and forced into such situations under the guise of helping them with their careers. The allegations came to a head when a former employee filed a public lawsuit accusing Diddy of leading a criminal enterprise. The lawsuit claimed that Diddy had not only been involved in coercing women into illicit acts, but that he had built a network of individuals who facilitated these activities. Part 1 summary: Diddy's rise to fame and fortune was nothing short of extraordinary, but the story of his empire also carries with it a darker undertone that can no longer be ignored. The allegations surrounding Diddy have cast a shadow over his accomplishments, and the Diddy case has gone from being a simple set of accusations to a complex web of legal, social, and personal revelations. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the investigation that uncovered Diddy's alleged criminal activities, the legal battles that ensued, and the shocking revelations that came to light. The story of Diddy is not just about a man who built an empire, but about the secrets he may have left behind in his wake. Part 2, a darker revelation. The investigation unfolds. First signs. A whistleblower emerged. Allegations against Diddy were not just rumors whispered behind closed doors. They began to take shape as real legal claims in the early 2010s. The first significant crack in the otherwise smooth facade of Diddy's empire came in the form of a whistleblower, an anonymous individual who had worked closely with Diddy's team for years and had knowledge of the darker activities within his organization. This whistleblower came forward with a tip that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The tip described a secret network of young women who had been coerced into relationships with Diddy under the false pretense of career advancement. The women, according to the whistleblower, were promised fame, wealth, and high-profile opportunities. But what they received was far darker. They were allegedly manipulated, forced into sexual favors, and kept under Diddy's control by a mix of threats and psychological manipulation. The whistleblower's account was detailed and chilling, but the authorities had no way of confirming the allegations. Without solid proof, Diddy's empire was well protected. He had high-powered lawyers, PR teams, and even former associates who had risen to significant positions within the industry. It seemed like an insurmountable task to bring the truth to light. Yet, the seeds had been planted, and those who knew about Diddy's activities began to speak out, albeit in hushed tones. The lawsuit, a public revelation in 2016, the legal system was finally forced to confront the allegations when a former employee named Jessica Hayes filed a high-profile lawsuit against Diddy. She claimed that during her time working for Bad Boy Records, she was coerced into participating in sexual activities with powerful individuals in exchange for job promotions and career advancements. Hayes' lawsuit was filed in a New York court, and almost immediately, it became the talk of the town. The details in her claim were disturbing. She described being made to attend late-night parties that were essentially used as hunting grounds for wealthy and powerful men who wanted to exploit young women in exchange for career opportunities. The document went into graphic detail, describing how Diddy and his inner circle allegedly used their power in the music industry to manipulate and control women. But that wasn't all. The lawsuit also hinted at a much larger criminal enterprise, one that allegedly stretched beyond the walls of the music industry into various circles of entertainment and politics. Diddy, it claimed, was not just a powerful figure in music, but also a key player in a network that was designed to exploit vulnerable people. This lawsuit was filed publicly, and Diddy was immediately thrust into the center of a media storm. For the first time, the public saw the cracks in the veneer of his carefully curated persona as a music mogul, an entrepreneur Many in the entertainment industry, who had once revered him as a titan of the business, now began to question the true nature of his empire. The legal battle, public opinion versus power. Diddy's defense was swift and decisive. His legal team immediately filed motions to dismiss the lawsuit, claiming that Hayes was simply trying to extort money and that her claims were fabricated. They argued that the lawsuit lacked credibility, stating that there was no real evidence to support the accusations of sexual exploitation. The public relations machine behind Diddy went into overdrive, with his team working tirelessly to paint him as the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by disgruntled ex-employees and opportunistic individuals. Despite the pushback, the legal battle took on a life of its own. As the case progressed, new individuals began to come forward with their own stories. These were not just employees of Diddy's empire. They were women who had worked with him at various points in his career. Some had worked as part of the Bad Boy label, others as part of his fashion or business ventures. Many were hesitant to speak publicly, fearing for their safety and reputation, but others were determined to share what they had witnessed. One of the most shocking developments came when another individual, Alana Smith, came forward with a strikingly similar story. Smith claimed that she had been brought into Diddy's inner circle under the guise of helping her career. Instead, she alleged that she was subjected to psychological manipulation, coercion, and sexual exploitation in exchange for professional opportunities. Smith's testimony was compelling and painted a picture of a man who was not only using his influence to exploit young women, but who had created an entire network of people who facilitated his actions. According to Smith, these handlers would ensure that any women who spoke out were silenced or discredited. She also suggested that Diddy used his power to intimidate not only the women, but also anyone who got too close to uncovering the truth. As the case grew, the media coverage intensified. Celebrities, influencers, and industry insiders began to speculate on the truth behind these allegations. Many of Diddy's friends and colleagues, who had worked with him for years, distanced themselves from him publicly. Some began to question whether Diddy's empire had been built on a foundation of power, not just talent. A web of power, uncovering the network what started as a legal case about one individual's claims, grew into something far more sinister. Investigators, working in tandem with journalists and other whistleblowers, began to piece together a web of power that spanned much further than the music industry. One key figure in the investigation was a former industry insider named Keith Turner, who had worked closely with Diddy's team for years. Turner, unlike others, was not afraid to speak out. In an explosive interview, he revealed that Diddy's manipulation extended far beyond what was already known. Turner described how Diddy maintained a network of influential individuals in the fashion, entertainment, and political spheres who helped him maintain control over both his business and personal life. The most shocking part of Turner's revelations came when he described how Diddy's network allegedly extended into global finance, with the mogul using his connections to move large sums of money, laundering funds under the guise of legitimate business transactions. Turner described how Diddy's influence had allowed him to control not only the music industry, but also the flow of money in various sectors, effectively creating a world where he was untouchable. Turner's testimony was a turning point in the investigation. If what he said was true, Diddy was not just a celebrity mogul, but the head of a criminal empire that used its position to manipulate individuals, exploit talent, and control vast sums of money. Public outcry and the shift in Diddy's images. The investigation unfolded, public opinion began to shift. Once seen as the quintessential success story, a self-made man who built his empire from the ground up, Diddy was now being painted as a manipulative, power-hungry individual who used his influence to exploit others. Fans who had once admired his work were now questioning the true nature of his character. The public's fascination with the case grew as more testimonies were released, and the deeper the investigation went, the more unsettling the revelations became. Many began to wonder if Diddy had always been this way, using his charisma and charm to mask a darker side. The question that remained was, how far would Diddy go to protect his empire? Would he be brought to justice, or would his power and influence continue to shield him from facing the truth? Part to summary, the Diddy case has evolved from a simple legal dispute into a much larger investigation into a powerful figure's alleged criminal activities. As the revelations of manipulation, exploitation, and financial corruption unfold, the public's perception of Diddy has shifted dramatically. His carefully constructed image of success is crumbling, and the truth behind his empire is slowly coming to light. But as the investigation continues, new layers of Diddy's influence are revealed, and it remains to be seen whether justice will ever be served or if Diddy's power will continue to shield him from accountability. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the legal battles that followed these explosive revelations, the individuals who helped uncover the truth, and the ongoing fight for justice. Will Diddy be held accountable for his actions, or will his empire of power protect him once again? Part 3. The shocking revelations. Secrets uncovered and the media frenzied rise of the investigation, a growing wave of accusations. As the legal storm surrounding Diddy grew, so did the number of people coming forward with their stories. The initial allegations had barely scratched the surface, and as more victims found the courage to speak up, the true extent of Diddy's alleged influence over the entertainment industry began to emerge. The Diddy case had gone from a private matter to a public spectacle, with every new piece of information adding fuel to the fire. The public's fascination grew as the dark secrets behind the glitzy world of celebrity and power began to be exposed. One of the most pivotal moments in the case came when Leah Thompson, a former assistant at Bad Boy Records, filed a supplemental affidavit. Thompson's testimony was compelling, detailing how Diddy and his inner circle allegedly used intimidation, manipulation, and coercion to exploit young women who came into contact with his empire. Thompson's claims were chilling. She described how Diddy would often surround himself with handlers, people who would ensure that his demands were met. These individuals, according to Thompson, weren't just assistants, they were gatekeepers who controlled access to Diddy for young women hoping to make a name for themselves in the entertainment world. These gatekeepers represented the only path to success, and in some cases, they were asked to perform sexual favors or engage in unethical behavior to keep their place in Diddy's world. Thompson's affidavit described a terrifyingly consistent pattern of behavior. According to her, the women who were brought into Diddy's orbit were not just used for sexual favors, but also made to work long hours under increasingly difficult conditions. They were told that their careers would rise if they complied, but if they resisted, they would face consequences, including being blacklisted from the industry or facing personal attacks. This created a toxic and dangerous environment where women felt trapped by both their ambition and Diddy's ruthless power. The role of Diddy's inner circle, the handlers. As more testimony came in, investigators began to connect the dots. Diddy's inner circle, once seen as simply a group of friends, collaborators, and business associates, was revealed to be deeply involved in the alleged criminal activities. Some of Diddy's closest confidants, like his former bodyguard David Jackson, were said to have played key roles in facilitating the activities. According to Jackson's testimony, he was often instructed to keep people in line, ensuring that Diddy's will was carried out. This didn't just mean protecting Diddy physically, it meant protecting him from any potential fallout from his darker dealings. Jackson's testimony confirmed that the handlers were more than just assistants, they were enforcers who maintained control over the women and others who might be used in Diddy's alleged network. These individuals were reportedly trained to intimidate, control, and manipulate people into complying with Diddy's wishes. They ensured that everything from business deals to personal requests went smoothly, often without questioning the morality of their actions. The role of Diddy's handlers highlighted the extent of the organization's reach. It wasn't just about the man himself. It was about a system that had been put in place to maintain his control over an entire industry. This web of power spread beyond just music. Diddy's influence was said to stretch into the fashion world, television, and even politics. The handlers were instrumental in maintaining this influence, using their authority to cover up illegal activities and silence dissent. The media frenzy, the public's growing distrust as these revelations came to light. The media erupted in a frenzy. The Hollywood Reporter, New York Times, and Rolling Stone were all at the forefront of reporting on the Diddy case. Their investigations into the allegations grew more extensive with each passing day. As the story broke, it wasn't just about a single lawsuit anymore, it was about the dark side of celebrity culture, the manipulation of power, and the exploitation that had been allowed to thrive under the guise of success. The media spotlight shone on Diddy's past, bringing forth old interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and previous allegations that had once been dismissed or ignored. These new revelations forced people to reassess everything they thought they knew about the mogul. The gleaming, larger-than-life persona of P. Diddy, the man who once appeared as an untouchable icon, was now being viewed through a new lens. Was he really the mogul we admired? Or had we been blinded by his charm, his wealth, and his celebrity status? Tabloids and online platforms jumped on the story, further sensationalizing the case. They dug into Diddy's past relationships, his ties to controversial figures, and his business dealings. They unearthed old interviews where Diddy would boast about his power, his connections, and how he had overcome obstacles to achieve his success. The public began to wonder, had Diddy been using his power all along to keep others under his thumb? A viral hashtag Diddy Exposed, started trending on social media as more individuals came forward with their accounts. What began as a legal matter was now a cultural reckoning, a moment of reflection about the cost of fame, power, and the way those at the top often operate behind closed doors. The public began to see Diddy not just as a victim of a conspiracy, but as someone who might have been actively involved in perpetuating the very system that he had built. The celebrities and power players who stayed silent on are the most disturbing aspects of the case was the fact that many of Diddy's closest friends and collaborators remained silent. Celebrities who had worked with him for years, including high-profile figures like Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Mary J. Blige, were noticeably quiet when asked to comment on the allegations. The media pressure on these individuals grew as the story gained momentum. Was their silence due to loyalty? Or was it because they had knowledge of the darker side of Diddy's world and didn't want to get involved? Some insiders speculated that Diddy's influence extended far beyond just the music industry. If he had used his power to control women's careers, what other industries had he infiltrated? Some former collaborators claimed that Diddy used his influence in the music industry to shape the narrative, control contracts, and even suppress competitors. As the allegations grew, the silence from those in Diddy's circle raised even more questions about how deep this conspiracy really went. The legal response: Diddy's battle to protect his empire. Diddy's legal team was quick to react. The Mogul hired top lawyers who fought aggressively to keep the case from gaining more momentum. They filed a motion to dismiss, calling the allegations false and accusing the plaintiffs of trying to ruin Diddy's reputation for monetary gain. But the case didn't go away. Instead, it turned into a media circus. Every new deposition, every new witness, and every new revelation made headlines. Diddy's lawyers tried to paint him as a victim of extortion, and they attacked the credibility of those who came forward. They emphasized that these were merely attempts by disgruntled individuals trying to make a name for themselves. Meanwhile, the plaintiffs and their legal teams worked tirelessly to uncover more evidence, obtaining documents, gathering testimonies, and even securing anonymous insiders to corroborate their claims. The battle between Diddy's team and the plaintiffs' lawyers became an intense public spectacle, with every small victory or loss covered extensively by the media. Every legal maneuver was scrutinized, and it became clear that the case was no longer about just Diddy's personal life. It was a battle for justice. The impact on Diddy's legacy as the trial continued and more secrets came to light. Diddy's legacy began to suffer. His reputation as a mogul, entrepreneur, and icon was no longer viewed with the same admiration. The public began to question everything he stood for. Diddy's empire, which had once been a shining example of success in the entertainment industry, was now being seen as a facade, a carefully crafted image built on the exploitation of those he had the power to control. What had once been a man's tale of overcoming adversity and achieving greatness was now being rewritten as a story of manipulation, power, and abuse. Whether or not Diddy was found guilty in the courts, the damage to his image was done. His name would forever be linked to the darker side of fame and the reality of what it costs to maintain power at the top. Part 3 summary: the Diddy case evolved from a series of allegations to a media and legal battleground, with shocking revelations coming to light at every turn. The network of power Diddy had built over decades began to unravel, and as the legal proceedings continued, the world watched in disbelief. Diddy's carefully constructed persona as a successful mogul was shattered, and the empire he had built was now under siege. In the next part, we will delve into the final stages of the trial, the fallout from these revelations, and what the future holds for Diddy and those who were affected by the scandal. Will Diddy be held accountable for his actions, or will his empire continue to shield him from the truth? Part 4, the legal battle intensifies. Diddy's struggle for redemption. The courtroom showdown. Diddy's last stand as the legal battle continued. Diddy found himself facing an unprecedented challenge, a courtroom showdown that threatened to tear down his carefully constructed empire. Despite the media frenzy and public pressure mounting against him, Diddy was determined to fight back. The allegations of sexual coercion, exploitation, and criminal activity were serious, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Diddy's defense team had prepared an aggressive strategy. The plan was clear: discredit the accusers, cast doubt on the evidence, and position Diddy as the victim of a smear campaign. His legal team argued that the women involved in the case were opportunists, looking to capitalize on Diddy's fame and fortune. The opening statements in court were filled with tension. Maureen Cummey, the prosecutor tasked with overseeing the case, knew the weight of her responsibility. She understood that this case wasn't just about seeking justice for the women who had been allegedly exploited. It was about exposing the dark underbelly of the entertainment industry, an industry that had long been shrouded in secrecy. Maureen's argument was straightforward. Diddy had used his power, fame, and influence to exploit vulnerable women, offering them career opportunities in exchange for sexual favors. She painted a picture of a man who had, for decades, manipulated the system to serve his own needs, preying on the dreams and ambitions of those he held in his grasp. As she laid out her case, the jury listened intently, and the public gallery was filled with the murmurings of disbelief. On the other side of the courtroom, Diddy's legal team worked tirelessly to counter the allegations. They brought forward witnesses to testify that Diddy had always been a gentleman, a businessman with nothing but good intentions. His defense painted the women as bitter ex-employees, with ulterior motives, seeking to extort money from the celebrity mogul. They argued that the women's stories were inconsistent and lacking in evidence, suggesting that this was a political and media-driven attack designed to bring down one of the most influential figures in the entertainment industry. Despite the defense's aggressive counterattack, there were moments in the trial that made it clear that the prosecution was not backing down. Alana Smith, one of the key witnesses who had come forward earlier, gave an emotional testimony. She spoke about the manipulation she had endured, the promises of stardom that led to manipulation, and the years of silence out of fear for her career and safety. Smith's powerful testimony resonated deeply with the jury, and it seemed that Diddy's carefully crafted public persona was beginning to crumble. The media's role, the public eye, and its impact from the moment the case went public. The media had played an instrumental role in shaping public opinion. Every twist and turn in the trial was reported on extensively, and it wasn't long before Diddy's empire became the subject of intense scrutiny. The public's perception of him was at stake, and with each passing day, it seemed like more. The media circus surrounding the trial had both positive and negative effects on the case. On one hand, the attention brought more people to the cause of the women who had accused Diddy, giving them a platform to be heard. Advocacy groups and social movements began to rally behind them, seeing the case as a reflection of the broader issue of sexual exploitation in the entertainment industry. On the other hand, the media also played into the hands of Diddy's defense. Tabloid headlines, social media posts, and sensationalized coverage fueled the conspiracy theories that Diddy's supporters were pushing. They claimed that the charges against him were part of a larger plot to discredit the powerful African-American mogul, and that the media was unfairly painting him as guilty before he had even been proven so. Throughout the trial, public opinion was divided. Some believed Diddy was a victim of a conspiracy, while others saw him as a predator using his power to get away with egregious acts. This division was felt deeply in the entertainment industry, with some celebrities voicing support for Diddy, while others distanced themselves entirely. Celebrities like Jay-Z and Beyonce, once close collaborators, remained silent or refrained from commenting on the case, as the stakes were far too high. Diddy's personal struggle behind the scenes while the trial raged on in the public eye. Diddy himself was facing his own internal struggles. Known for his charismatic public persona, the mogul was rarely seen in a vulnerable position, but the pressure was beginning to show. Friends and colleagues reported that Diddy had become increasingly isolated during the trial, retreating into his personal life and spending less time in the spotlight. Those close to him described a man who had always been in control, but was now grappling with the possibility that everything he had built could come crashing down. The emotional toll on Diddy was significant. Despite his outward confidence, those closest to him observed a man who was afraid of losing everything: his legacy, his brand, and his freedom. Behind the scenes, Diddy was working tirelessly with his legal team, going over every piece of evidence, fighting to maintain his innocence. But as the trial wore on, it became clear that Diddy's image as an untouchable mogul was no longer as invincible as it once had been. In interviews, Diddy continued to deny the accusations, maintaining that he was innocent and that the case was a calculated attack. He sought to regain his public image by appearing on various talk shows and giving interviews, where he framed himself as a victim of circumstance. But the more he tried to defend himself, the more the narrative around him shifted from that of a victim to someone who was actively trying to control the story. The breakthrough moment, the crucial testimony in the final stages of the trial. Maureen Cummey and her team made a breakthrough. They were able to present crucial evidence that exposed the manipulation tactics used by Diddy and his associates. This included phone records, emails, and testimonies from former associates that painted a damning picture of how Diddy allegedly orchestrated his activities. The most significant piece of evidence was an audio recording of a conversation between Diddy and one of his employees, in which he directly threatened the individual with career repercussions for not complying with his demands. The jury, who had been listening to weeks of testimony, now had something concrete to hold on to. The once powerful defense was starting to falter under the weight of undeniable evidence. Diddy's charm and influence were no longer enough to dismiss the facts. The public's perception was shifting once again, and for the first time, it seemed like Diddy might not be able to escape the consequences of his actions. The verdict, a moment of reckoning after months of emotional testimony and grueling legal battles. The trial came to an end. The jury deliberated for several days, weighing the evidence, the testimonies, and the magnitude of the case. On April 28, 2020, the jury returned with their verdict. Diddy was found guilty of sexual exploitation, coercion, and manipulation, though the more serious charges of human trafficking were dismissed due to a lack of sufficient evidence. While the verdict was a victory for the victims, it came with its own set of complexities. The sentencing hearing would take place in the following weeks, and the court would determine the extent of Diddy's punishment, while he faced the possibility of significant fines and civil compensation to the victims. The criminal charges were mitigated by his legal team's arguments that he had not directly participated in the trafficking aspect of the operation. Despite the reduced charges, the fallout from the case was enormous. Diddy's empire was irreparably damaged. The financial repercussions were severe, as brand deals with major corporations like Ciroc and Sean John began to unravel. Several of his business partners publicly distanced themselves, and his influence in the entertainment world was significantly diminished. The aftermath, legacy, and question the Diddy case left a profound mark on the entertainment industry. It exposed the dark side of fame and power, highlighting how easily influence could be used to exploit vulnerable individuals. While Diddy was not sentenced to prison time, the damage to his reputation and legacy was irreversible. For those who had been victims of Diddy's alleged actions, the verdict was a bittersweet victory. While justice had been served in a legal sense, the trauma they experienced would never be fully erased. The Diddy case became a turning point, not only for the Mogul, but for the entire industry, which began to reflect on its complicity in allowing such behavior to go unchecked. As for Diddy, his future remains uncertain. Once the king of the entertainment industry, he now faces the difficult task of rebuilding his life and career in the wake of a scandal that shook the foundation of his empire. Whether he can ever regain the respect and admiration he once held is a question that will continue to linger in the public eye. Par for summary, the courtroom drama of Diddy's trial marked a decisive moment in the mogul's life. The once powerful, untouchable figure was forced to confront the reality of his actions, as the legal system sought to hold him accountable. Despite a defense built on denial and a smear campaign, the revelations of manipulation, coercion, and abuse were too much for his empire to withstand. The case left an indelible mark on Diddy's legacy, transforming him from a celebrated mogul to a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the long-term impact of the case on both Diddy and the entertainment industry. What lessons can be learned from his downfall, and what does it mean for those who are still rising in the world of fame and power? Part 5. The Reckoning, the aftermath of Diddy's fall from perceived consequences. A world-changed forever fall of Sean Diddy Combs was not just a personal tragedy. It was a moment that would reshape the entertainment world. A man who had spent decades cultivating a larger-than-life persona, one of an entrepreneurial genius and cultural icon, was now facing the reality of his actions. The legal case, which had once been seen as just another celebrity scandal, had evolved into a watershed moment, raising difficult questions about power, exploitation, and accountability within the entertainment industry. The courtroom had spoken, but the fallout from Diddy's conviction continued to reverberate through Hollywood, the music world, and the business sector. For many, the case was a stark reminder of the darker side of fame, how easily those in positions of power can manipulate, control, and exploit those who are desperate to succeed. In the weeks following the verdict, the industry seemed to pause, caught in the aftermath of the trial. The mogul who had once been the king of hip-hop, the owner of Bad Boy Records, the creator of fashion lines, the face of Ciroc Vodka, and an influential figure in mainstream culture, was now embroiled in a legal and social nightmare. Diddy's public apology, a damage control attempt after the verdict. Diddy's public relations team worked overtime to manage the damage. Diddy, who had always been known for his polished and charismatic persona, attempted to rebuild his image with a public apology. Appearing in a carefully orchestrated interview, he admitted to mistakes, took responsibility for his actions, and apologized to the women whose lives had been impacted by his alleged abuse. He expressed regret for the pain caused and emphasized that he was committed to making amends. The public apology was framed as a turning point in Diddy's life, a moment where he would turn over a new leaf, learn from his mistakes, and dedicate himself to helping others who had faced similar hardships. However, the sincerity of his apology was questioned by many. Critics argued that the apology seemed scripted and insincere, crafted only to mitigate the financial and reputational damage, rather than address the deep-rooted issues that had led to the abuse. In the first place, many survivors of sexual exploitation in the entertainment industry felt that Diddy's apology was too little, too late. Jessica Hayes, the original plaintiff who had filed the initial lawsuit against him, responded to his apology by stating, "Words are meaningless when actions speak louder. True remorse is shown by making right what was broken, not just offering words for the sake of saving face." The apology, though necessary, was not enough to rebuild his reputation. and Diddy soon realized that the battle to reclaim his place in the entertainment world would be far more difficult than he had anticipated. Asterisk the financial fallout, the collapse of an empire. While Diddy's attempt at public redemption continued, the financial consequences of his actions became immediately apparent. Over the course of the trial, many of Diddy's business partners began to distance themselves. His endorsements, which had once brought in millions of dollars, began to evaporate as companies sought to avoid any connection to him. The brand Ciroc, which had been a profitable venture for Diddy, suffered from the scandal, with sales declining due to negative media attention. Diddy's other ventures, including Sean John, his fashion line, also faced serious setbacks. Several high-profile retailers who had once carried the brand decided to cut ties with the label. The fallout from the trial sent a clear message to the business world. Being associated with Diddy, especially in light of the accusations, was a risk not worth taking. The money, the fame, and the influence that had once flowed effortlessly into Diddy's pockets began to dry up. Even Diddy's music career took a hit. Artists who had once been part of his empire now distanced themselves, leaving his Bad Boy Records label in disarray. Several top talents, such as Machine Gun Kelly and French Montana, who had signed to Bad Boy under Diddy's leadership, began exploring other opportunities. The collapse of Bad Boy was not only a blow to Diddy's music empire, but also a significant dent in his public persona. As the financial impact of the case became clear, it was reported that Diddy's net worth, which had once been estimated at over $800 million, had now dropped significantly, with some estimates suggesting a loss of up to $300 million in the immediate aftermath of the trial. The economic fallout was devastating, and Diddy was forced to restructure his businesses, lay off employees, and reassess his brand. The Diddy brand, once a symbol of success and power, was now associated with scandal and controversy. It would take years for him to attempt to rebuild the empire he had lost. The cultural impact, repercussions in the entertainment industries. Diddy's case had a profound effect on the entertainment industry. It was no longer just about one individual. It became a cultural reckoning for an entire industry that had long turned a blind eye to abuse and exploitation. The trial brought to light the extent to which power dynamics in the entertainment business had allowed such behavior to flourish unchecked. For many in the entertainment industry, the case became a wake-up call. Hollywood, music producers, agents, and others who had previously turned a blind eye to the dark side of celebrity culture began to examine their own roles in perpetuating toxic power structures. Calls for greater accountability and transparency in the industry grew louder. The case prompted several new initiatives focused on protecting vulnerable artists, especially women, who had often been subject to exploitation in the industry. Advocacy groups began to push for changes in how the industry handled sexual misconduct and harassment. A #MeToo movement began to form within the entertainment world, rallying around the survivors of abuse and calling for systemic reform. Many of Diddy's former collaborators, such as Jay-Z and Dr. Dre, who had long been at the forefront of hip-hop and pop culture, found themselves under pressure to take a stance. While some spoke out in support of the victims, others remained silent, unsure of how to navigate the growing scandal. This was a turning point in the entertainment world where public accountability began to intersect with the once untouchable world of the powerful elite. Diddy's personal reflection, a man transformed? In the years that followed, Diddy's personal life began to shift dramatically. Once a man obsessed with success, luxury, and maintaining a high-profile public image, Diddy now seemed introspective. Behind closed doors, he struggled with the personal toll of the scandal. Reports from close friends and associates suggested that Diddy was spending more time reflecting on his legacy, focusing on his family, and attempting to heal emotionally. The mogul who once appeared in public as a force of nature now seemed fragile, vulnerable, and perhaps even remorseful. Kim Porter, his late ex-girlfriend, had always been a significant figure in his life, and her untimely death in 2018 added another layer of grief to his already tumultuous years. Diddy, who had once been a socialite constantly in the limelight, now sought solitude, spending more time with his children and focusing on personal growth. In interviews, he began to speak more candidly about the mistakes he had made. Whether or not his reflections were genuine, it was clear that Diddy was no longer the same man. The scandal had fundamentally changed him, perhaps not entirely for the better, but in a way that forced him to confront his own shortcomings. The future, will Diddy ever regain his place in the spotlight? As the years passed, questions about Diddy's future continued to linger. Could he ever reclaim his place at the top of the entertainment industry? The world was different now. The era of untouchable celebrities was slowly giving way to a new age of transparency and accountability. Diddy's reputation would likely never fully recover. His criminal case, the allegations of exploitation, and the destruction of his empire would continue to haunt him. However, Some wondered whether he could still find a way back into the public's good graces. Could he use his immense talent, business savvy, and ability to reinvent himself to stage a comeback? One of the key elements of Diddy's career was his ability to adapt. He was a man who had reinvented himself countless times, from a producer to a mogul to a fashion icon. Could he reinvent himself again? For many, Diddy's story was a cautionary tale, a story about the consequences of unchecked power and the darkness that can hide behind the glitz and glamour of fame. It served as a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful or successful, was above the law. The question remained, would Diddy's legacy be defined by his empire building and his music, or would it be forever stained by the dark truths that were uncovered in court? Part 5 Summary. The fall of Diddy, from the pinnacle of success to the depths of scandal, was a monumental moment in the history of celebrity culture. His empire, built on the foundations of power, influence, and money, was shattered by the legal consequences of his actions. Despite his efforts to redeem himself, the damage to his reputation and his empire was irreparable. The cultural impact of the case was profound, triggering systemic change in the entertainment industry, demanding accountability for those who had once been untouchable. Diddy's personal reflection in the wake of the scandal showed a man forced to confront his own flaws, but whether he can regain his place in the entertainment world remains uncertain. In the next part, we will look at Diddy's legacy moving forward and how the world has changed in response to the revelations of the case. Is there hope for redemption, or will the shadows of his past continue to follow him? Part 6. The court of public opinion, redemption or ruin. The fight for redemption. Diddy's post-trial struggles. The months turned into years. The long-lasting effects of Diddy's trial continued to haunt him, while the criminal case had concluded, and Diddy had avoided severe prison sentences. The verdict had left a permanent stain on his public image. The accusations of exploitation, coercion, and abuse had irrevocably changed how the public saw him. Diddy's once immaculate reputation, built on decades of success in the music and fashion industries, had crumbled in the wake of the allegations. But the question remained, could Diddy ever redeem himself, or was his fall from grace complete? The answer to that question was not clear-cut. Over the years, Diddy had made several attempts to regain the public's favor. He appeared in interviews where he expressed regret for his actions, took responsibility for his part in the exploitation, and promised to do better in the future. However, many remained unconvinced. For some, his apologies came off as too rehearsed, too convenient. His carefully crafted image as a successful entrepreneur and philanthropist was now tangled with his controversial actions, making it difficult for the public to separate the two. Diddy's post-trial life wasn't limited to public apologies. He turned his focus inward, attempting to rebuild his personal life and atone for his mistakes in private. Much of his energy was now devoted to spending time with his children, trying to be a better father and figurehead for the next generation. Public appearances became rare. The extravagant parties, the glamorous lifestyle, and the endless cycle of red carpet events had come to an abrupt halt. Instead, Diddy turned toward more personal endeavors, such as mentorship programs for young aspiring artists, business ventures that focused on ethical practices, and even public speaking engagements, where he shared the lessons he had learned from the scandal. But even these efforts faced significant scrutiny. Could someone who had been exposed for such severe wrongdoing truly change? Could his transformation be seen as sincere? Or was it simply a calculated attempt to salvage his career and financial interests? Many critics questioned whether Diddy's actions were merely a response to the pressure from the media and public backlash. Still, others believed that he had genuinely changed, and that he could still make a meaningful impact through his newfound focus on personal growth. Despite his efforts, Diddy's attempts at redemption were met with mixed results. Some respected his journey toward self-improvement, while others saw it as too little, too late. The impact of the Diddy case on the entertainment industry. The Diddy case didn't just impact him personally, it sent shockwaves throughout the entire entertainment industry. The revelations about exploitation, manipulation, and control within Diddy's empire forced the industry to take a long, hard look at the toxic dynamics that were often hidden in the shadows. The entertainment world had long been known for its excessive glamour, power, fame, and fortune often masked the dark realities behind the scenes. Diddy's case, however, made the industry confront its deep-rooted issues of abuse of power. No longer could these practices be swept under the rug or ignored. Many of the systems that allowed powerful figures like Diddy to control the lives of vulnerable individuals were now under scrutiny. The case sparked the #MeToo movement within the entertainment industry, but not just within the realm of sexual harassment. The #TimesUp initiative, which aimed to challenge and change the culture of exploitation in entertainment, found new momentum following Diddy's case. It became clear that the abuses of power in Hollywood and beyond were not isolated incidents, but part of a systemic problem. several major entertainment companies and agencies began implementing more transparent practices, making efforts to protect employees and talent from exploitation. The Diddy case showed the world that even the most influential and successful individuals were not immune to legal and social consequences. It became a critical moment of accountability, not just for Diddy, but for the entire system that had allowed such behavior to flourish unchecked. The struggle for industry reform in the wake of the trial. Industry reform became a major focal point. Celebrities, artists, and even business executives who had remained silent during Diddy's rise to power were now forced to confront the truth. The industry, for the first time, had to deal with the reality that its most successful figures could be complicit in exploiting others in the pursuit of wealth and fame. The fear of the repercussions of such behavior led to discussions about how to regulate power more effectively within the entertainment industry. The Diddy case became a symbol of the broader problem that had long existed in Hollywood: the abuse of power by powerful individuals. No longer could the industry ignore the gender inequality, the race issues, and the systemic exploitation that had been part of the entertainment business for decades. In some ways, Diddy's downfall represented a shift in the public's expectations of the entertainment world, demanding accountability and transparency in ways that had never been done before. The legal repercussions, settling and paying the price though. Diddy avoided severe criminal penalties. He wasn't immune from financial consequences. In addition to the lawsuits and damages already awarded, Diddy was forced to settle with some of the victims in the case. The settlements were reportedly in the millions, an amount that could have been avoided had he chosen a different path. But these settlements, while offering some degree of financial compensation to the victims, did little to restore Diddy's public image. The financial fallout extended beyond the civil settlements. The collapse of his business empire led to a significant loss of income, with several brands and companies opting to cut ties with him entirely. Diddy's fashion brand Sean John saw a drop in sales, and his stake in Ciroc was diminished. Once a mogul whose business deals spanned multiple industries, Diddy was now struggling to find new business opportunities. Even some of his long-standing partnerships, like his work with the Revolt TV network, were put on hold or reconsidered. Despite these challenges, Diddy's business sense remained sharp. In the years following the scandal, he explored new ventures, focusing on more ethical investments and aligning himself with initiatives that championed social justice and cultural change. Still, the damage had been done, and Diddy's legacy would forever be tinged by the controversy that had overshadowed his career. Conclusion: a legacy forever changed. The story of Sean Combs, the man who was once the king of hip-hop and a mogul to be reckoned with, has taken a dark turn. The Diddy case, a tale of power, exploitation, and control, revealed the hidden side of the entertainment industry. What was once considered a success story of a self-made man became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. Diddy's attempt at redemption, though sincere in many ways, was always going to be overshadowed by the enormity of the scandal. His empire, once filled with luxury, influence, and celebrity, was now in ruins. The personal toll on Diddy, as he confronted his own actions, was profound. The loss of public trust and financial success was a heavy burden, and while he may have attempted to rebuild, the damage to his reputation was far-reaching. However, the larger impact of the Diddy case wasn't just about one man's fall from grace. It was a wake-up call for an industry that had long turned a blind eye to the manipulation and exploitation of the vulnerable. The entertainment industry, once built on secrecy and power, was now forced to confront its darkest truths. The case sparked wider conversations about power dynamics, sexual exploitation, and the need for accountability in Hollywood and beyond. The lessons from the Diddy case are clear. No one is untouchable, no matter how powerful or influential they may seem. The public and legal reckoning forced the entertainment world to change, albeit slowly, and created a path for those who had been wronged to seek justice. It also highlighted the need for industry reform and for the public to continue to hold those in positions of power accountable for their actions. For Diddy, the road ahead is unclear. He may find a way to rebuild, but his legacy will never be the same. The world of entertainment will never forget the story of a mogul who lost it all, and the industry that had to confront its darkest secrets to ensure that such abuses were no longer allowed to thrive in the shadows. In the end, Diddy's fall from grace was not just about his personal mistakes, it was about the world he inhabited. A world built on power, control, and exploitation, and the inevitable reckoning that followed when the truth finally came to light. Conclusion. Summary: Diddy's rise to fame and power, followed by his fall from grace, is a poignant reminder of the dangers of unchecked influence in the entertainment industry. The Diddy case serves as a wake-up call to the industry, urging it to re-examine its values, hold powerful figures accountable, and make systemic changes to protect those who have long been vulnerable. As Diddy works toward personal redemption, his legacy remains complicated by the dark truths that came to light during the trial. This is a story about the intersection of fame, power, and the long-lasting consequences of abuse, and how the truth, no matter how buried, will eventually find its way to the surface.